At 7:17 in the morning on June 30th, 1908, a man named Semen Semenov was sitting on his porch in Siberia, 60 kilometers from nothing. He said the sky split in two above the forest. He said a wall of heat hit him, like his shirt had caught fire. Then something threw him off the porch, and he lost consciousness. When he woke up, the trees on the horizon were gone, not burned, gone. And here's the part that has kept scientists arguing for over a century. Whatever did this never touched the ground. Let's start with the scale, because most people don't understand what actually happened out there. The blast flattened roughly 2,000 square kilometers of forest. That's an area larger than the city of London. 80 million trees knocked over. And they didn't fall randomly. They fell outward in a perfect radial pattern, every trunk pointing away from a single central point, like spokes on a wheel. The energy released was somewhere between 10 and 15 megatons. For comparison, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. Tunguska was roughly 1,000 times more powerful. It was, by a wide margin, the largest impact event in recorded human history, and almost nobody investigated it for 19 years. That sounds impossible until you understand where it happened. The blast site sits in central Siberia, in swampland and dense taiga forest, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest railway. There were no roads. In 1908, Russia was 5 years from revolution and had other priorities. Local Evenki herders knew. They said the god Ogdi had come down and cursed the area, and they refused to go near it. The rest of the world recorded the event without understanding it. Seismographs across Europe picked up the shock. Barometers in Britain registered the pressure wave. And then something strange happened to the sky. For the next several nights across northern Europe, it did not get dark. In London, people played golf at midnight. Newspapers reported that you could read a newspaper outdoors at 1 a.m. without a lamp. Astronomers in Germany and Denmark complained that they couldn't observe anything because the sky was glowing. Nobody connected it to Siberia because nobody in London knew anything had happened in Siberia. It took until 1927 for a Soviet mineralogist named Leonid Kulik to reach the site. He expected to find a crater. He expected iron fragments the way you find them at any meteorite site. He walked into the largest impact zone ever recorded, and he found neither. What he found was a forest of standing dead trees at the center, stripped completely bare of branches and bark, still upright, surrounded in every direction by 80 million flattened trunks. Kulik called it the telegraph pole forest. He went back 4 separate times over the next decade. He drained swamps looking for the crater. He drilled. He surveyed. He found nothing. And this is the detail that turns Tunguska from a disaster into a mystery. There is no crater. There is no meteorite. The standing trees at the center are the clue. Trees survive upright when the blast wave comes from directly overhead, pressing straight down rather than sideways, which means the object never landed. It detonated in the air, somewhere between 5 and 10 kilometers up. So, what exploded? The mainstream answer is an airburst, and the physics work cleanly. A stony asteroid roughly 50 to 60 meters wide entering the atmosphere at around 15 kilometers per second. At that speed, the air in front of it cannot get out of the way. Pressure builds at the leading face until the internal strength of the rock fails and the object fragments. Once it fragments, surface area increases instantly, drag increases with it, and the remaining kinetic energy dumps into the atmosphere in a fraction of a second. The rock is vaporized. There is nothing left to find. That's the answer, and it's almost certainly correct. But two things about it still aren't settled. The first is what the object was made of. Some researchers argue for a comet fragment instead of an asteroid, mostly because a comet is largely ice, which explains the total absence of debris and possibly explains the glowing skies, since a comet would inject water vapor high into the atmosphere. Others point to microscopic particles found in the soil and in tree resin at the site, which look more like stony asteroid material. The debate is still live. The second is the size. Estimates of the object have been revised downward repeatedly. Early calculations said hundreds of meters. Later modeling, particularly after the 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor gave scientists real data on a real airburst, brought it down toward 50 or 60 meters. The uncomfortable part of that revision is that a 50-meter object is small enough that we do not reliably detect them in advance. Now consider the timing. The Earth rotates once every 24 hours. If Tunguska had arrived 4 hours and 47 minutes later, the same object would have detonated over St. Petersburg. If it had arrived on a different day of the week, it would have landed somewhere else entirely, and most of the planet's surface is water, and nobody would have known at all. It hit the emptiest place it could have hit. 3 people are thought to have died. In any other 4 hours of that day, the number would have been in the hundreds of thousands. We got the version of that morning where the sky exploded over nobody.